Yesterday afternoon, Manchester City completely outplayed Arsenal in the Carabao Cup final on the way to a 2-0 win. The second half in particular was dominant. Manchester City had 63% of the ball, 8 shots, 2 big chances and of course 2 goals, but perhaps more importantly, reduced Arsenal to just 0.17 expected goals in the second half. Arsenal didn't really have a sniff in this game. Now, of course, in a match like this, there are a million different things going on, from player decisions to tactical ploys and substitutes. There is so much going on in a match like this. However, what I want to focus on today is 2 tactical elements that I feel really dictated where this game went, more so in the second half, and that's what I want to focus on today. Starting off with Arsenal trying to play out from the back, trying to build possession, and simply being unable to because of Manchester City's defensive approach. And for me, this is very important for City because you've got to earn the right to play on the ball. Shortly, we'll talk about how good City were in possession, but you've got to earn the right to do that. And to really control a game in the way that Guardiola wants to, you've got to be defensively sound. And City were in this game. If we start off with Arsenal, though, and their approach, we're going to see the 2 centre-backs split either side of the goalkeeper. The full-backs push a little bit further forward, almost in line with the double pivot in midfield. Now, what was interesting from Manchester City's point of view was that they positioned players really high up the pitch, but they didn't necessarily go for a high press. Instead, what City were looking to use was more of a high block, with Erling Haaland and Ryan Cherki forming a front 2, but actually joined by Semenyo and Jeremy Doku. So if we just sort of link these players together like this, we can see a front 4 for Manchester City. None of them really applying that much pressure to the ball, but they're all doing a very important job of cutting out the passing lanes. Declan Rice and Zubamendi were pretty much kept in the pressing shadow of the Manchester City front 2. So what this means is that Haaland isn't necessarily going to go and high press Saliba, but what he is going to do is stand in a position where Zubamendi cannot receive the ball. So if Zubamendi was to move across, Haaland would move across as well, and City are trying to block these passes in between the lines. And they did a fantastic job. Now, as Arsenal, what you try and do is you try and bait them. For example, you might use Kepa in goal. So you might move your your goalkeeper into a centre-back position. And what you might do is give him the ball and ask him to take extra touches with the aim of drawing City out onto you. So Kepa stands on the ball, perhaps Haaland eventually comes towards him, and now maybe that's when he can find a free man. But the trick here for City was just to not take the bait. Just look at this short clip here. Kepa just stands on the ball the whole time, sort of waiting for a reaction from someone, but City don't give it to them. The City front 4 didn't take the bait. But I also feel that Arsenal didn't do enough to manipulate. Arsenal didn't do enough to cause tension on this front 4. There wasn't enough movement from Declan Rice and Zubamendi. Could one of them at times dropped between the centre-backs and it could have gone like this to force City to change shape or open up those passing lanes through the pitch? Could someone from higher up have arrived? Could one of the fullbacks rolled in as a centre-back moved wider to shift someone like Semenyo? Arsenal, for me, did not ask enough questions in this game. In the second half, I thought the City defensive approach was good. I think they pressed well. The 4-2-4 looked very, very strong, very solid. But I just don't think Arsenal asked enough questions. So what Arsenal were eventually forced to do was to just play the ball long. The problem is they've spent big money on a striker who's a very good goal scorer, but his all-round game isn't really good enough. He's not someone who can pluck the ball out of the air particularly effectively, and he's not strong enough in the air to beat the centre-backs. So Arsenal didn't really have an answer, and that is why City were able to dominate possession. Not just because of their on the ball, which we're about to chat about, but because defensively, they didn't really give Arsenal any solutions. So because City was so good from a defensive point of view, they were able to get on the ball in the second half. They were able to get the ball down, start knocking it about and try and find a way through Arsenal. Arsenal were set up in a 4-4-2, so Gyökeres and Havertz are going to form a front 2, and Bukayo Saka and Trossard are going to get through a lot of work to sort of drop deep alongside their 2 central midfielders, and the Arsenal fullbacks are also going to tuck in. Arteta's side very compact in the middle of the pitch. The question for City is, how do you move through them? Can you ask them different questions? Now, of course, once again, a million different things would have been happening in the second half, but there is one tactical thing that I want to focus on, sort of how Manchester City looked to attack this stubborn Arsenal shape. So initially, what Manchester City did was build possession with a back 3. So Nunes, Kusanov and Nathan Ake would form a back 3, whilst O'Reilly would move a little bit higher, either wide on the overlap or underlapping into midfield, or at times even tucking into the double pivot. But the important thing here is that City now have a back three. Now what this means is that City have more players, right? 3, last time I checked, is more than 2. Especially when you've also got Rodri sort of dropping into a solo pivot role now. There's 4 players there up against the Arsenal 2. It's too easy for City. So what we started to see was Trossard on the left-hand side try and gamble a little bit higher against Matheus Nunes to try and put him under a little bit of pressure, to squeeze higher, to make sure that his teammates aren't overloaded. The problem is, the Manchester City players are just so technical, it's an absolute joke. Particularly the fullbacks. O'Reilly and Nunes are central midfielders at fullback. In recent years, what we've seen is the trend of centre-backs in the wide zones. What we're now seeing from Pep Guardiola this season is 2 central midfielders in the fullbacks role that you would feel are going to offer you a bit more technicality on the ball and a bit more progressive nature on the ball. And someone like Nunes in particular is a great ball carrier, so he is someone who is willing to take risks on the ball. He is willing to sort of take on Trossard and try and move the ball forward, and I think he did that very, very effectively. The other thing that City did really well, though, was use Ryan Cherki on the right-hand side. See, in this game, he sort of started off as a 10, playing just behind Haaland. Off the ball, we saw him playing in the front too. Yeah, on the ball, he was almost like a secondary right winger. City essentially played with 2 right wingers in this game. Look at the touch map of Cherki, and then look at the touch map of Semenyo. Basically, 2 right wingers down the right side of the pitch. And I think if we, again, just link these guys together, Semenyo, Bernardo Silva and Ryan Cherki were fantastic in this game at rotating, overloading and just causing problems for this Arsenal side of the defence. Because Trossard has jumped a little bit higher. If he's going to do that, Declan Rice has to do the same. He's got to join him behind in the press. But now City just had far too many solutions down the right side. And all 3 of these guys can sort of rotate into different positions. Semenyo can go and play more central, whilst Bernardo Silva goes wider. Or Bernardo can go deeper and Cherki goes wider. It was just too fluid, really, from Manchester City. And they really pulled out these Arsenal players up here and then knocked the ball around them. With boldness on the ball, with bravery, with technical quality, which is, of course, very important for any game plan to work. The technical ability of your players. And City had that in abundance in this game. And it allowed them to move down the right-hand side. But what I really enjoyed seeing about this performance from City was once they got themselves into the final third, they did not hesitate to get numbers in the box. Just look here, the amount of players in that Arsenal penalty area is absolutely ridiculous. It looks like a set piece, almost. Loads of City players committing to the box, and I think that is so important to do that. To throw them in there, to take the risk, to put the ball into the box, you do it enough times in a game, and you're going to get that little bit of luck or a little bit of quality or a mistake from the opposition. Something might happen, and that's what City did fantastically. Really great rotations down the right side of the pitch. They freed Ryan Cherki into this great position where they could go 2 versus 1 against the fullback. And even at times, Cherki could go inside, really narrow, actually take Trossard with him at times, and then there's the easy pass to Semenyo, who is another player who is more than capable of going 1 versus 1 against his man. And they're doing all this work down the right-hand side, they're getting themselves into great positions, and then the delivery into the box is quality or fortunate, and Manchester City had plenty of players crashing into the box, with the most important one being O'Reilly, arriving from that back post, and because he sort of arrives so late, no one's picking him up. Haaland, for example, is picked up by a centre-back. Doku is an attacker, so the full-backs picked him up. But O'Reilly sort of drifts in. He gets off the back of Bukayo Saka, arrives into the box, and 2 very good goals to celebrate his birthday, and a really good Manchester City performance. So yeah, as I've said a few times, there was much more to this game than just that. There was more going on, but I think those were the 2 most important tactical points for City's dominance in the second half. It was the high press suffocating Arsenal, or the high block, I should say, sort of reducing Arsenal to nothing. Arsenal didn't really have a solution. As a result, City were able to get the ball down, were able to play, dominate possession, and when you allow a Pep Guardiola side to do that, with the technicians that he's got on the pitch, with the bravery of the team selection, a lot of attacking players in his team, I'd argue sort of there's only 2 defenders here, with those midfielders at fullback, the great 1 versus 1 wingers, and plenty of technicians in the middle. It was really bold from Pep to see him go for this attacking approach, and it worked. City were fantastic in the second half, and Arsenal could not get close, and City were worthy winners of the Carabao Cup. Does it mean anything for the Premier League title race? Does it affect the mentality, momentum, anything like that? I don't really know. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with that. You would think Arsenal have probably got too much, over the course of the rest of the season, but who knows? Not me personally. I just watch the game and say what I see. And that is what we've done today, and that's where we're going to stop. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please make sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, please, because it really does help. And as always, I will see you in the next one.